Depth. I'm your host, Angelo. And on today's show, we have our Latin America and Spanish lead, Elian Huesca. ¿Cómo estás?
Hey, what's up, hermano? Good. Thanks for having me in the podcast.
Of course, absolutely. So, Elian, let's get into your background, how you got into crypto, and why you're here.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Elian Huesca. I'm from Mexico. My background is in international relations. I did a bachelor in international relations, and then I went to study a master degree in migration and political science. And in the meantime, I worked for a couple of years in the United Nations office on migration, basically. And so I work a lot with migrants, and I got the chance to see a lot of the sort of issues that migrants live in Mexico and in the U.S. And after studying a lot of about remittances, I started to dig into cryptocurrencies back in late 2016. I think the first time I heard about Bitcoin was back in 2011 when WikiLeaks got their bank accounts closed. Their Visa and Mastercard, banks closed. That was the first time I didn't put much attention to it. I was like, okay, interesting, like internet money. Then in 2014, I heard again about Bitcoin with a story related to the Silk Road and the dark web markets. And I was like, oh wow, again Bitcoin, and then in 2016, digging into remittances, how to transmit money, and then through friends also there that were talking about, hey, have you heard about this? So I started digging into, and I got really hooked up. It was like this big going down the rabbit hole into understanding, coming from a political science background, understanding how this technology put a challenge into one of the sort of essential monopolies of the state, which is the creation of money, and how open source code suddenly becomes this tool that offers an alternative to monetary systems. So that basically blew my mind. So in 2000, that was 2000, beginning of 2018. In the peak of the bubble, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna stop doing whatever the thing that I was doing, and I'm gonna go into this industry because I realized it was an industry, right? So you will have like developers and lawyers and accountants and people in communication and programming and web design, everything. So I was like, okay, so how do I do this, right? So I started digging in Mexico, what was happening in the industry, and I think it was mid 2018. I start kind of, I don't know how it happened that I got start looking at Decred. I think the first time I saw Decred was in early 2018. I got really attracted by the design of the project. Like the all the image and the colors and the design is very well thought. You can see there's a lot of effort behind it. So I think that was one of the first things that caught my mind on Decred. And then mid 2018, I realized that there's nothing in Spanish of Decred. Decred has nothing in Spanish, and also I remember, like mid 2018, Marco Pereboom shared this image of it was like a matrix message, in like a black background with the green letters, saying something like, well, we're Decred, we're looking to grow, and we're looking for people that understand what we're doing and that could get their hands into work. So I was like, oh wow, this could be interesting, right? So yeah, I think that was basically how it started. I realized there was nothing in Spanish, so I started with an account here in Mexico, and then I did a couple of meetups. I did 3 meetups in Mexico, and then I got invited to work as a contractor. So I think that was how I went into crypto, and then how I eventually went into Decred.
Right. So apart from the design, what was it about Decred that you found extremely attractive?
So I think once I started to dig into the project, I realized that you need to have, well, first of all, a technological side of things, right? And in that side, well, you have these OG developers that start working on Bitcoin like back in the early years, and that they decide to do something else. So it's like, wow, you have sort of the technological background necessary to accomplish this kind of endeavor, which at the end is creating a global currency. And then I realized about the social component, like, because you have technology, but but you need to have this other social sort of a layer in which the technology works, and that gives sense to the technology in a way. Um, and that's where I realize how, so basically, the where the Decred works. How this open global organization able to build towards a common goal, having people from anywhere in the world, without, like, regardless of their country of origin or residence, of ethnicity, of gender or preferences. It really doesn't matter at the end. And coming from a background in which, I used to work for one of the probably, yeah, one of the most centralized institutions on the planet, which is the United Nations. So then coming into this sort of a realm, and like seeing how work can basically, you know be done in another way, it was really mind blowing. So I think that was kind of the things that attracted me to work, this philosophy of doing, of being a community of doers, that instead of asking, hey, what do I do, is like, okay, so I'm seeing that there's this niche that I can contribute to, and this is sort of my skill, so I can put them to work towards this common goal. And that was fascinating.
So now let's talk about your experience as a contractor. How has that been?
So yeah, I mean, it's as part of this experience of working for the project in the DAO. Well, it's been a unique experience. I mean, coming from a very hierarchical, centralized institution in which you have very you know formal and rigorous rules and parameters of what you can do, and going into a space in which, yeah, you're free to do whatever the thing you think that it could actually contribute to the conversation. So in that sense, being a contractor it's been challenging in a way that I need to kind of find the job every day, because yeah, as I said, this is the first time in history that we're actually building this economic systems, and we're kind of doing it in an sort of a error and learning approach, in which some things work, some things don't. So working in Decred, it's a lot of trying to find those things that could work in a completely new market, and that's a very interesting thing, that basically how do we build communities that uh, become markets that eventually are part of this economic ecosystem that we're building, because that's kind of the fascinating things. Once you start seeing how Decred works, it's an entire ecosystem which it's basically working towards itself, by having a lot of different parts working towards a common goal. And this is when the conversation about the alignment of incentives, and how do we work towards a common goal in a situation in which we don't know each other. This is curious fact. When back in August 2018, I did a trip to Amsterdam. I got the chance to give a talk there about cryptocurrencies in Latin America, and I met with Noah. And that's kind of the first time that I met with someone with from the project. And it was really cool to see this exactly, how do you say, like, way of doing things, of you just like putting ideas on the table and things, and seeing how some things can work. So yeah, I mean, it's been great to be in a contractor. There's a lot of things that I realize about how these new technologies, these new systems are probably going to work in the future. I mean, we don't know. I think we're doing this really big experiment, and we're learning how this is going to unfold in the future. But it's absolutely mind blowing to see the reach, how big can this grow?
So, Elian, what was the objective of the proposal you submitted recently on Politeia?
Right. So for the first year that I work with Decred, the marketing and events proposals from early 2018 sort of allowed me to do pretty much all the work that I start doing it, and then other people start helping me. So we did a great job. I think it was a very nice job. Once I saw the complete list of events, we did around 40 events in 10 months. So that's around like an event or meetup per week. So I was like, wow, we did a lot of stuff, right? So and this was thanks to these proposals. So the idea of making our own proposal was to have more autonomy on a regional level on what we could accomplish, what we could do. Basically on the same lines that we worked before, which is assisting to events, doing events in everywhere we can, connecting with local communities that are also interested in this industry and how it works. So I think that's kind of the biggest part of what we're doing here. It's connecting with the industry in Latin America, which it's complicated because it's such a massive continent. But the idea of the proposal was basically that, to having a designated budget approved by the stakeholders of the project, that could allow us to work, to operate for 6 months. So this is between December and May, more or less. And also, in a way, to give an example of how a regional proposal could look. Basically, the idea is that eventually, with time, more of these proposals could come sort of at the regional level, that could allow other teams to do this work with more autonomy. And I mean, I think the idea with time is that the project will have a lot of these proposals working all over the world, right? So I think this was also one of those experiments to see how we will look, how we can measure the impact, which I think is something that from the proposal itself, I could notice that that's kind of one of the challenges and the things that worry the community of stakeholders. How do we measure going to an event, making a meetup? How do we measure? And it's really hard because I could totally see how it takes time to build relations that could translate into actual material benefits for the project. So it's challenging, but at the end, I think it's part of this experiment that we're doing.
Right. Now, how was the process in getting the proposal approved? We know that one of the things that people struggle with when they enter the project is acclimating themselves with the community. How did you go about that?
Right. So I think the process to submit the proposal itself, it's quite straightforward. This was the first time that I did it, and it was quite easy. Quite the user experience it's quite easy to do. Nonetheless, I recognize that this would have been impossible without the time that I previously put into the project, and that other community members that joined me also put into the project. Because and it's something that I see also from looking at how other proposals have been unfold on Politeia, and it's at the end, it's a matter of building a reputation. And yeah, I think it's in an industry where, I don't know, we can debate on the number, but I'll say 90% of things are most certainly a scam. Building a reputation, it becomes something that it takes time for people to actually notice, like, who you are, what are you doing. In my case, it's fairly straightforward because I do a lot of public appearances. So in a way, I've built that reputation by going into events, talking about Decred, shaking hands, giving cards, and basically being there on the field, sort of working to get the project known. So I think because of the support that I received through the year, we got the chance to build this reputation. I mean, I kind of talk for me, but also for others that have been helping me. It's I really like to see how when I started, the Spanish channel on Riot on Matrix, it was completely like shut. There was nothing there, and now, well, we got a bunch of people from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina, some from Spain. So I see how these efforts have sort of a flourish into something that you can see. Of course, this is completely in an organic way. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons it takes more time, because we're actually kind of a sort of a going door by door, saying like, hey, have you heard the news of taco time in Sock? But yeah, at the end, I think it's building a reputation, get to know the community, understand how this open source project works, is what gets a proposal approved at the end of the day.
Understood. Now let's get into the areas that you're covering. What are your perspectives into Latin America and Spain and the cryptocurrency industries in those areas?
Well, I think it's there are plenty of opportunities. Um, my experience, I started looking at the industry here in Mexico, understanding what were the main drivers for this technology. Remittances being probably the biggest one of it. Like every year, it's like $32 billion that cross from the U.S. to Mexico, and then you have these intermediaries taking massive profits out of this, right? So this technology could actually transform how this money movement, money flow works, and I will argue on the benefit of those that need it the most, right? So that's kind of how Mexico works. You have a population, a big population, 130 million people, and then you have this a big, user base of people kind of getting into crypto. We calculate that we have around between 500,000 and 700,000 users. So you get a very vibrant ecosystem here in Mexico. And then as I start kind of exploring what was happening in Latin America, I realized that even though one Bitcoin, one Decred is the same here and anywhere in the world, a Decred or a Bitcoin are going to have completely different circumstances in every country that you will go. In some will be closer to others, but in some will be completely different. So that's something that I start realize when I start like kind of going and exploring Latin America. You will have places where the actual use case for these technologies is an alternative to monetary system, like in Argentina or Venezuela, or you will have other cases for remittances, or probably also speculative, reasons, as in Brazil, where there is a massive sort of a speculative, it's one of the main kind of use cases. So I think the potential is huge. I mean, the Spanish peak is that the Spanish speaking world, it's around 400 million people, with a lot of different needs that could be solved, or where cryptocurrencies, blockchain could offer alternatives. So I think that's something that is very interesting. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different circumstances. For example, the case of Spain, in which they really don't have the need for these kind of technologies. There's rather a big community of developers that are working on this project, these technologies, but there is no need. They have the euro. The euro works fairly fine. So yeah, it does change. It changes a lot from country to country.
So now, what are some of the countries you feel needed the most, say in Latin America?
Um, well, I mean, as I said, the case for remittances, I think, is massive. There's huge potential for global, money, global censorship resistant money like Decred, um, to work in this kind of money flows. And then you have alternatives to hyperinflationary policies, which I think it's something that it's there's two big examples. You have Argentina and Venezuela. Venezuela being the sort of the most critic of them. Um, and these technologies are offering alternatives that it might not necessarily be how the crypto industry is perceiving it. I think around Venezuela in particular, there's this whole idea that is going to become the next sort of adoption place in the world, where I mean it's not necessarily the case. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're seeing that there are cases of need that are completely different from those sort of a use case that you would find in the US or in Europe. The other day, I saw this phrase that adoption will come either for greed or need, and yeah, I was thinking about it. And yeah, of course, like being a trader in the city of London, thinking about volatility. Well, you have a completely different approach to these technologies. Being in Argentina and realizing how well, I mean, just this year, in April, I was in an event in Argentina in April 2018. $1 was 40 pesos. Then in August, it was 60 pesos. Then by December, it was 78 pesos. So you're actually seeing, I mean, people is actually looking for alternatives to what money, of to how money is working there. And yeah, I absolutely see how Decred, Bitcoin, or other cryptocurrencies are offering a playground for people to start exploring what can they build on top of these technologies.
So let's talk about Spain a little bit. How is the industry developing over there?
Um, well, I'm really looking forward to explore more about this. During the past month or so, I've been talking to a lot of people there, um, particularly in Madrid and Barcelona, which are the two biggest cities. But then I also got in contact with other local communities in Vigo, Bilbao, and Valencia. And I imagine that there is a different sort of a mindset towards cryptocurrencies. Of what I've asked in my conversation, there is a lot of sort of a mistrust towards a lot of what the cryptocurrency industries are, because of all the scams that have happened in the past 3 years, basically since the bubble of 2018 17. um, and I think there's a lot of people that is actually looking into understand at the more technical level how these protocols work. I had a conversation with the one of the people working in Barcelona for making blockchain events, and he was really excited about talking about governance, about these sort of issues that I think they represent the social sort of a component of these technologies. How do we uh, how do we basically take decisions? How do we agree on or not on something? Um, so I think Spain is looking into a completely different mindset. There is not the need in particular for these technologies, but there's a big community of entrepreneurs and developers there. A lot of people go there because sort of a how do you say, like global workers that are looking for the best places to be. So there's a big community of people there, and this year one of my sort of objectives or priorities is to get the project closer to Spain, because yeah, that's kind of one of the sides that I'm still missing from this the Cara en Español approach, right? Which is try to to target all the Spanish speaking world. So yeah, Spain I think is going to be very interesting to see how. And for me it's a constant learning process. At the end of the day, like going into all of these countries and understanding how this technology is working there, it allows me to kind of have the big picture. Interesting case, for example, Bolivia. In Bolivia in 2014, the government decided to outlaw all cryptocurrency activities. So they banned all the activities related to cryptocurrencies and the financial system. So basically, they stagnated the industry, right? That same year, the first three exchanges in Mexico opened. Uh, 4 years later, what happened? Yeah, I mean, Mexico, you have now over 10 exchanges, you have over 500,000 users, and a bunch of startups that are looking into using blockchain technology, because of all this sort of a market that has grown. And then you have Bolivia where there's nothing, then you have they're starting to do what the Mexicans did back in 2014, which is going into a pub, getting a beer and talking about crypto. And hey, what do you think about this? And how does it work? And what can we do? What can we do with it? Right. So I think that's, and I see it as part of the job to actually understand how this technology has unfold in all of these countries in order to have a bigger picture, and from this point of view, being able to create a strategy that could allow Decred to sort of get more tropical and going into the Spanish speaking world, right? It's a matter of tropicalization at the end. Like if we're gonna build this global currency, we need to kind of give it the tone of every region or part of the world that is getting involved.
Interesting. So being so heavily involved with Central America and South America and having a feel for what's going on in those regions, similar to Akin in Africa, what are the biggest hurdles you see for adoption with cryptocurrencies and in these markets?
Mm, yeah, I think the sort of the you mean like the biggest challenges? Yes, I think there is still a big learning curve that people need to go through, which it takes time. I do realize that the younger you are, the easier is to go through this learning curve. In talent land, where the audience is youngsters in their 2021. When you talk about digital currencies, like decentralized digital currencies that do not belong to any country or corporation, they look at you like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. When I talk to people in their 40, 45, 50s, it's like they look at me like, but why? Like how? So I think that's a big challenge. Like understanding how this technology works. I think over time it's becoming easier and easier because there are more. There's more awareness on the one hand, and there's more people looking into it, which sort of I see that ignites other people to talk about it, because people is gonna go and be like, hey, you know what is this blockchain thing? And then somebody's gonna be like, oh yeah, it's this thing and da da da. Um, but I think another big challenge, it's regulation, in a way that you have all these countries with completely different regulatory frameworks, that I don't know. I think that's gonna be a big challenge, but I think that's gonna be a big challenge, like from a global standpoint as well, not only for Latin America. Um, I see there are a big number of known scams that I don't know where they get the funding, to be so big. It's impressive, and I think having this sort of scams out there, uh, it makes a very bad name uh, to all of the sort of a legit projects that we're working towards creating decentralized infrastructure. So I think that's another challenge. And yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the main challenge that I see. I still think that we have a long way to go before the user experience and the user interface to use these technologies can be used by anyone. The with great powers comes great responsibilities, and having the complete sovereignty of your private keys, of your funds, it is a big responsibility. So I think we are still. I don't know how we're gonna get. How are we gonna make conscious of this? Because something that I've learned too is that for some people they don't care. If you have a family of migrants in California sending $1,000 to their family in Michoacan, they don't care about cryptocurrencies or blockchain or whatever. They just want the money to get there as fast as and as as complete as possible. So it becomes complicated because I still think there's a big barrier to understand how these technologies work. I think over time it's gonna become shorter, like smaller and smaller, and it's gonna become easier and easier to use these technologies. But yeah, they're still complicated.
So now circling back to Decred, do you have any concerns for the project moving forward, and where do you see the project in, say, 5 years?
Um, I see. Where do I see? Where are the challenge that I see for the project? Um, I think it's there. It is not easy to sort of dig into Decred, into the inner sort of workings of the project, because there's so much things happening all the time. It's just so much things going on that it takes a lot of time. And I don't remember where I read something. It was like a review made by a crypto fund in which they were kind of giving their thesis, and they were saying that for it's very hard for people to work in a project like Decred because there's so much things going on that it's very easy to sort of fell behind of what is happening. So I think in order for and this is something that I've talked with all the other contractors. There's need to be sort of not an easiest way, because this is also a filter for the people that actually have a natural interest for this project. But yeah, how do you become a contractor? How do we grow the workforce of Decred? And I think that's gonna become a challenge with time. I'm really looking forward to see how the contractor management systems continue evolving to provide sort of the tools for the community of contractors to keep doing the job, our job, because there's so many things happening. You have marketing and community and development, um, and yeah, I mean, I think that's a challenge. I think it's I'm really proud that Decred is a very hardcore, you know uh, code sort of a hub. Like, people like to code and they take it very seriously, and that's something that you recognize when you talk to people, how developers at Decred are much respected because people know that they know their things. And that's kind of one of the key elements of what I think Decred is amazing, because the tech side of it is it's really solid. And then we have sort of the how do we tell people about this tech? How do we tell the people that we have one of the most solid techs on the space? And I think this kind of process of iteration that goes through code, it also happens on the sort of a social aspect. We're continually iterating on how do we get the project known. Seeing how the PR process from the very beginning, early to 2018, to to this third sort of a process of choosing a PR, has been very interesting for me to see. Because at the end, you kind of see how there's this collective intelligence that is, kind of making itself known, and because there's so many people from so many places that it's I do see it as a collective that it's working towards a common goal. um, I I think there might be challenges for participation, for more people participating. I'm really excited about how the ticket splitting process through the Lightning Network can eventually become a very nice user experience, because I think that's going to open the process of participation to a lot of people, that, to be honest, like a ticket today, I mean, for the Western world, it's not too bad. But for some parts of the world, that's a very prohibitive you know amount of money to participate. So I think that I'm really excited about how the ticket split can work. Everything surrounding the Lightning Network, I think it's super exciting, as well, for the privacy implementation, and see how this can, how the user experience or the user interface for this can, it's going to work out. So I think there's a lot of things very exciting happening in the project that, I mean, here to the next 5 years, where do I see the project? I would like to have a more solid, mm, not more solid. No, no, no. That was not the word. Actually, I would like to have that. I would like to see that there are local communities like all over countries in Latin America, and all over the world. Kind of just growing and building on themselves or by themselves, because in a way it's this idea of decentralization, right? Like, how does, I don't know if you ever saw this animation that they share about the development of the code in Decred, and how it's like an organic sort of a creature that is constantly growing by what others do. So I do see this network that eventually becomes more decentralized, and you have much more people participating, from all over the world. I mean, we are already doing it, right? It's just a matter of time for it to grow. And I think that's at the end what it really excites me the most, to eventually see, what Decred can be in the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And also the idea that we're building something that it's here to stay. We're building something that it's built to last 100, 200, 300 years. And that is something that really excites me to be part of this organization. Becoming a decentralized autonomous organization. I think that challenges pretty much everything that we've learned about human organization, about the nation state, about political science, in a way, and how technology is transforming basically the social contracts that have built history of the past, I don't know, 100 years. I don't know.
Well, Elian, thank you for coming on the show and taking time out to break down how Decred is working in Latin America and in Spain, of course. Where can people find you?
Our networks of Decred en Español. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts, and also Medium. You can find me on Twitter as at Elian Huesca. I'm all over the place.
Awesome. Gracias, hermano.
Gracias, hermano. Un gusto estar aquí.